We got a 90-day update on our GoPoo Hero 9 Black. And I have to tell you, this is the most frustrating piece of equipment I have had in a long time. We bought this camera primarily to use in motorsports. We like to record when the various cars are out on the racetrack, record every lap. And sometimes the sessions can run 20-30 minutes. And this GoPoo will not record a session that long without some malady. I think in the last event that we went to record, we out of 5 or 6 sessions, we managed to record one session start to finish. All of the other sessions, the camera just arbitrarily shuts off or arbitrarily monkeys up the video. It will record audio but stop recording video. It just does whatever it feels like doing. We've had numerous phone calls or support calls, whatever you want to call them, with the chat bots at GoPoo, and we're not getting anywhere. We've done all of the little things, the firmware, the download direct latest update. We put a battery door on here that allows us to access the charging port without a lot of grief. We bought an Enduro battery, thinking that might help. We got the latest, greatest double throw me down super whoop-de-doo SD card, and nothing is helping. And it's extremely frustrating. So the last thing that we've done is decided that maybe, well, my initial thoughts were that maybe vibration from the race car was causing the thing to go haywire. But now, after more investigation, I think what's happening is the camera is getting hot and shutting off. And when you look into this, there's quite a bit of evidence that these cameras really don't want to record more than about 20 minutes at a clip, depending on what video setting you're using. In this particular case, we started out using 1080p 30 frames a second, and now we're at 4K 30 frames per second. I have to say, in all fairness, that the video quality, when you get it, is excellent. And, you know, really, the irony is that I'm making this video using my GoPro Hero 3, you know, back when they were still good. But we bought the Hero 9 because it has image stability, which is something the 3 didn't have. And of course it has the ability to shoot high resolution video. And, you know, we thought it was time for an upgrade. But apparently all of the things that led us to buy the new camera are things that are killing the new camera. The image stability system generates a lot of heat. High resolution video generates a lot of heat. You're talking about the processor having to write 30 frames a second of 4K video to the SD card. So all of those little guys in there running around doing all those little jobs are generating a bunch of heat. And the other day I tried an experiment. I took this camera and mounted it in the windshield of my road car and just rode around and let it record. And I managed to get over an hour of video. And of course, what that means is you have a whole pile of 8-minute clips that you can't do anything with. That's another story. But I did get it to record over an hour. The next time I used it, wasn't quite as long, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes, 40 minutes, something like that. And when I stopped at where I was going, got out, left the camera run, when I came back, the camera was off. So as it sat there and the sun beamed through the windshield, and I have to say it was 90 degrees outside, and probably the windshield amplified the temperature. But as the sun beamed through the windshield, the camera got hot, I think, and shut off. And it actually, the camera itself was so hot that you could barely touch it. And I hadn't really paid that much attention to that before. And one of the things that I thought about the heat was that mounting this on the race car, it's an open car, so the roll bar sticks up in the air. Camera's out in the airstream. Car's going 100 miles an hour, 120, 150, 170 miles an hour, whatever it is. There ought to be plenty of airflow around the camera. The ambient temperature is still 85 degrees. The sun's still beating down on it. And, maybe, GoPoo people, black is not the best color for your camera case. You know what I mean? I remember a day when they were all silver. And then they were white and silver and black. And now they're just all black. And guess what? Black absorbs the heat. So you're not helping yourselves. They're kind of trick looking black, but maybe that's not the smart tip. So then what we did is we brought the camera back. And I have to say, though, that I took the camera and held it in front of the air conditioning duct and cooled it down, and it turned back on. And on the trip home, it lasted probably a half an hour before it just arbitrarily turned itself off, pulling away from a stoplight. And I have to assume again that it just got hot because I couldn't turn it back on, and I had to cool it down to do that. So the heat is definitely a factor. Excuse me. So the next experiment was to simply put it on the table, turn it on, and let it record and see what happened and measure the temperatures. So, of course, sitting on the table on a little tripod, there wasn't any movement to speak of, so the lost my train of thought. So the hypersmooth, whatever they call their deal, wasn't really functioning. There wasn't anything to smooth out, so to speak. And the camera recorded for, I don't know, till the SD card was almost full. It was quite a bit, hour and 30 minutes or something like that. But in the process, I kept checking the temperature. And this camera, just sitting on the table, in a climate-controlled room, the temperature in the room was 74 degrees, got up to 125 degrees. And that primarily was in this area right here, was 125 degrees. Around in the other areas was 110, 112, 15 degrees, whatever. Now, the camera didn't shut off at 125 degrees, but I seem to remember reading somewhere that the operating temperature of these things is sort of not higher than 95 degrees, and these, of course, are Fahrenheit numbers. So I don't know. I don't know what the limit is on one of these things when it shuts off. I mean, I know my cell phone will shut off, and the thing with the cell phone is when it shuts off, when it's hot, you just lose everything. It doesn't auto-save before it shuts off. These GoPros, apparently at least, will auto-save whatever you've done before they shut off. So, okay, what to do about the heat? If we determine that heat is actually a problem, what do we do about that? Well, well, there's not a lot you can do about it. Maybe we can cover the thing with aluminum foil. I don't know, that probably won't work. But what I'm going to try, I got one of these, and it's a metal combo cage. And the thinking here is that the metal combo cage, made out of aluminum, I suppose it's billet, may act as some sort of a heat sink and draw heat away from the camera and let it radiate off of the frame. It's actually kind of a trick piece, and these things come in plastic and aluminum. This particular model is a Teleson metal combo cage, and it's actually actually pretty nice. It's got a cold shoe here and a cold shoe over here, and the back simply opens up and you slide your camera in, and then you slide your door back down and it locks in quite nicely, and now you have your camera encased in this metal frame. Now the next experiment is going to be, we're going to turn it on and let it record in the temperature controlled environment and see if we can measure the temperature of the unit versus the temperature of the frame, and see if in fact this metal frame is acting like a heat sink to draw away from the camera. One can only hope, but we'll run that experiment next and see what happens. I have read about some people that have actually glued heat sinks to the camera to draw off the heat, and that seems kind of hokey. And then there's a guy that makes a case that goes around the camera, has a fan in the back, and again, that really doesn't really solve the problem that we have of mounting this on the race car. This particular setup would certainly allow us to continue to mount the camera on the race car, and it's nice. It gives you complete access to the battery and access to your buttons, and place to mount other accessories if you want, and they're not really very expensive. The other thing is you can take this bottom plate off, and there's a 1/4-inch hole in there, so you can mount this directly to something with a standard 1/4-inch mount, instead of having to use this pivot mount and worrying about your camera flopping around at 150 miles an hour. So we'll see. One of the other suggestions that people have ventured forward is to take the battery door off, take the battery out, and plug in a accessory battery pack and power the camera from a standalone battery pack, and in some cases leave the battery door off. Now with my luck, the SD card would self-eject and be somewhere out in the middle of the racetrack. But even taking the battery out and putting the battery door back on may help. We're going to have to do that experiment as well, because quite frankly, I don't know if it's the battery that's getting hot and shutting the camera down, or the camera that's getting hot and shutting itself down. I'm really not sure there. And one thing to consider is all these new batteries are lithium-ion batteries, and they are, in fact, very temperature sensitive. So, you know, there's a lot going on here, but I'm thinking, at least based on all the stuff that we've had going on, that our enemy is heat. We've been doing some real world, if you want to call it that, testing on our GoPro Hero 9 to try to see what we could suss out as far as the heat was going, and also our new Teleson cage, see if that helped or not. Too early to tell, to be honest with you. I've had a couple of situations where we've been able to use the camera, and stationary and controlled environment, it recorded, you know, more than an hour. We put it in the car and drove around with it mounted to the dash, and it recorded. I tried taking measurements. I expected, perhaps, I guess, that the cage would end up being warmer than the body of the camera. Maybe it was helping draw heat off the camera. The only thing I can hope for now is that it's keeping the sun off the camera. I can't really say that that it's working as a heat sink. I do like the framework. It's a neat piece. I will say this, that we had trouble in a particular instance today where we used it, and we had no GPS signal. So it says in their brochure, advertisement, whatever you want to call it, that the cage doesn't affect the GPS signal. But what I think is that, and what I've just been able to ascertain at least, is that you need to make sure that the camera is on and has a GPS signal before you put it in the cage. If you put it in the cage and turn it on, it's likely not going to find the GPS signal. And unless you check your little icon, your little sort of map icon, and make sure it's bright white, you may not get your GPS signal. So that's just a word to the wise there. As I said, I like the piece. It's nicely made. I don't know that we'll ever use these hot shoes. I'd be happy if it didn't have this hot shoe on the top and had an open space here, maybe to let the GPS signal get in. I don't know specifically where the GPS antenna is in this camera, but that's another story. I like the fact that the end is open and you can get access to your battery compartment here. And of course we have this max cam door on here with a little access to the charge port anyway. But that's a nice feature. So I do like the idea of this cage. I still am not 100% convinced that it's going to be the cure to our overheating problem. I see that GoPro offers some silicone cages, covers, whatever, and you can get one in white, which makes a little bit of sense if it's going to reflect the sunlight. But apparently these covers fit so tight that the heat from the camera can't escape. So at least in this case, this open design lets the heat out. So hopefully in the next week or so we'll have a chance to get out again in the real world and try this on an actual race car in that environment and see what happens. But that's the story for today. Make sure. We had another weekend adventure with our GoPoo, and it went the same way they've all gone. Hopeless. This has to be the worst piece of engineering that I have ever seen in my life. If you have one of these, find somebody you don't like and gift it to them, because it's not good for anything. Maybe a talk tick video or something like that. So we took this thing out. We've tried every conceivable thing that we can think of to get it to work, and it simply doesn't want to work. We set it up in the kitchen in a temperature controlled environment and turned it on and let it record, and it recorded for 18 minutes and 14 seconds, and the video froze. It continued to record audio, but the video froze. And then the next day we put it on the race car and we got half a lap. And then the next time we put it on the race car on a different mount in a different place, we got 48 seconds before it went sideways. This thing has just been a nightmare. Sometimes you push the power button, sometimes it turns on, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you turn it on and you get all kinds of crazy lines on the screen and funny colors, and the screen is half on the top and half on the bottom. It just, I don't know. But this is a hopeless piece of crap. And anybody that says any different, I suppose that there may be somebody out there that has a GoPro 9 that is just pleased as punch with it, and it works fine every day. This one, along with hundreds and hundreds of others that you see online, doesn't work worth a hoot. And I just don't know what to do about it. In theory, according to what they say, I should be able to return this, but what's the point of getting another one if it's going to do the same thing? And what would be the point of buying a Model 10 or a Model 11 if they haven't corrected the problem? I just, it's terrible. I mean, don't know how else to put it other than the fact that this is a colossal failure. And if you're thinking about buying one of these, don't. And I wouldn't buy any GoPro product at this stage of the game until somebody can prove that they do what they're supposed to, which is function as an action camera. This is a great no-action camera, but that's not why we bought it. So, I don't know. It's just extremely frustrating, and I am out of ideas on how to fix it.